Repeat after me. We will not make angry TikToks when avoiding doing hard work. We will not sell ourselves out for cheap dopamine in lieu of the work that moves us to where we want to go. We are better than anger-fueled work avoidance rants on the internet. Penny for your thoughts chat on Americans protesting. Specifically, are American protests actually ineffective, or are we just misusing the tool? So this week I was scrolling TikTok, which I hate. Has anyone else developed a love-hate relationship with TikTok? No? Just me? Okay. I was putting off something important, and while scrolling, I kept seeing people calling protesting cringe or criticizing everything about this past week's nationwide protest. Everything from the signs to what people wore, and I'm not gonna lie, I came out the gate pretty hot, okay? You, as a leftist, are not going to be making the fucking signs that you think people should be having to provide aid to the cause that you feel that people should be running. Maybe shut the fuck up. Shut up. It's exhausting. It is so incredibly... I full on crashed out about how ridiculous it is to tear down every single effort. Being stuck in this position where we're only providing criticism without an example of success, while at the same time expecting organized movement. Not just that, but expecting organized movement with decentralized effort is nuts. Okay? Expecting 1960s levels of protest professionalism while being made up of normal, barely woke people who have never fought for anything, let alone for anyone else before, I might add, without sources of mutual aid to support those movements, is short-sighted at best and honestly just straight up annoying at worst. You have to start somewhere. You get people making collective movements, it's easier the next time for them to make a collective movement. You get people understanding this is what the process is. It's easier for the next time. I'm just so incredibly shocked at how many people I see get on this internet and critique and don't provide solutions, don't say, hey, the next protest, I got signs. Hey, the next protest, here's what I'm going to be doing. Your girl lost it. I was frustrated. I ended up pulling the post, not because I felt wrong, because I still feel pretty strongly about this, but because I don't want to contribute to infighting on the left. And, it's just not what I want to put out into the universe, especially I've always been someone who believed in direct action. I don't believe in, providing any bad news without solutions or something that you can use that information for, which is what I think makes a lot of people burnt out. You're just giving them intel and there's nothing that they can do with or translate that into action. And I don't want to allow my frustration to affect any coalition building. And I do understand the frustration that a lot of people feel with wanting, everyone to kind of just be on the same level already. I get that frustration. I also get the frustration that comes from, movements being co-opted and hijacked and just, I get it. But with that being said, I find myself circling back to this question, especially when it comes to people who feel the need to criticize any sort of protesting without providing any solutions or pathways forward. Are American protests actually ineffective, or are we just misusing the tool? My analysis is that we are misusing the tool. At the end of the day, more protesting is going to come. We already know that. But the bigger question is, what do we actually want to do with it? It seems like a lot of us are looking at protesting like the end all be all, instead of asking ourselves, okay, what happens before and after the march, the signs, the chants? How do we iterate? How do we make this better? Because if there's no goal or there's no strategy or there's no follow through, how do we even define success and failure? How can we say that something is a failure or something is not not effective if we don't really have any measures of success that are kind of agreed upon? It seems like we don't really have agreed upon understanding of what the purpose of protesting is. That's the first issue, first and foremost. And when I say we, I mean people who lean to the left. And, by lean to the left, I mean people who are aligned with that belief system that is prominent on the left and the ideology. And by belief system, I mean believing in things like racial and gender equity, labor rights, climate justice, universal health care. The belief that systems, not just individuals, need to change, need to evolve. When I say ideology, I'm not talking about political parties. I'm so far past political parties at this point, it's not even funny. And I think a lot of times people hear left and they think Democrat, or they hear right and they think Republican. And that's guys, the political breakdown video is coming, okay? It's coming. We're moving outside of political parties. And I think that's where we need to evolve to. What I'm talking about when I say ideology, I mean our shared values, the ones that at least for me, center people over profit. We have dignity over, dominance or domination, and solidarity over status, over everything. It's a class war, baby. That is 100% my belief. So now that we have clarified who and what we are really talking about, hopefully we're on the same page now. What I mean when I say we and what I mean when I say left leaning, I think that's important to get clear on. So now we can ask the question with a little bit more clarity. If protests aren't working, I'm using the term working loosely because you have to have a measure of success in order to determine if something is working or not. If protests aren't working, is it because they are inherently ineffective? Or is it because we've fallen for political purity on one hand, and on the other hand, we have forgotten what protests are supposed to do? Or we're upholding them to some unrealistic outcome instead of evolving with the 21st century. Which one is it? Are they ineffective and that's just it? Or are we holding on to this idea of what they are supposed to be, and anything that falls below this idea of what we feel they're supposed to be is a failure? And is that outcome, or what we feel that they're supposed to be, even realistic for this day and age? My analysis is protesting, like boycotting, is a tool. It is not a solution. I don't think it's even supposed to be a solution. It's supposed to agitate. It's supposed to disrupt. It's supposed to bring people in. So I can kind of see what people mean from the standpoint of, oh, it's performative, because if you have a very specific view of what a protest is supposed to do, and it's only supposed to disrupt or, stop the machine, then yes, I guess you could say, this last protest was a failure, if that's the definition that you are using. But if you have a little bit of a wider spectrum, which I think it's important to look at most things with a wider spectrum, in my opinion, it's supposed to do all of those things. It may not be doing all those things in one specific protest, or, you may have more of one thing in another protest and less of another thing in another protest. But ultimately, for me, agitation, disruption, bringing people in. That's my interpretation. Y'all tell me your interpretation. But the consensus that I was seeing was consistently, oh, the signs weren't serious enough. Oh, people had costumes on. Oh, it was just old people out there. We're so focused on critiquing how people are showing up instead of leveraging them, instead of activating them, instead of giving them specific instructions. We're focused on critiquing. And I'm not saying there's a problem with critiquing. That's a lot of times how things get better, but getting stuck on the diagnosis and never moving towards the solution, I think, is where we are at. We are not activating people when they do show up. And so the video that prompted my angry rant, the person gave a scenario about how silly signs take away from the movement and how serious they were in the 60s and how crappy it would feel to be protesting in the 1960s or something. And then you're getting beat up by the police, and the last thing that you see before you get cracked in the head is a silly sign that said something like, we love BBC or something, and how that takes away from the seriousness of the movement. While I didn't think the criticism itself was crazy, I think that for me, it was like, damn, this video got 1.2 million views. It could have been used in a way that was like, hey, here's like unified messaging that we have on the left. If you're somebody, because the girls were asking, what should we put on our signs? That tells me people want to know. People want to know. They don't know. They have no clue, especially when you think about like how many white people were out there protesting for the very first time. And what I don't think a lot of people realize is Black people are professionals in the fighting for justice arena. Like, you think about the protesters in Seattle, and they're like professional protesters, like they are operating as a well-oiled machine, but that's not everywhere. And Black people are the professionals of fighting for justice. And so, and I know particularly like these last few protests, I've seen a lot of Black people be like, we're not doing this. And, we're not even going to get into the layers of intersectionality that need to happen for people to understand why some Black people would have that approach. But the fact of the matter is, as much as we hate it, we're the professionals in the room when it comes to fighting for justice. And so if you have protests that are taking place and, there's not a heavy Black people presence, I don't expect them to be that way. I would just keep it a buck. So I thought that this criticism, without, informing people and say, hey, this is something that would be better instead, it got 1.2 million views. Like, that's an insane amount of messaging that is critical with nothing following up or saying, do this instead, or like just evoking shame. And I think like that's a huge issue that we're having with call out culture. It's like, okay, how do we shift from call out culture to call in culture? So, That triggered me. I was triggered with that. I thought it was crazy because all I could think about was if I'm the victim of state-sanctioned violence, I'm not really feeling better about it because on the way down, at least the saw that I caught in my peripheral was serious. Like, we are literally critiquing activism being performative and then turning around and focusing on the importance of making sure the aesthetic vibes are just right for the backdrop of state-sanctioned violence. State-sanctioned violence. All the comments were like, oh my God, you're so right. You're so right. Those signs were so cringe. Oh, it was more of a social gathering. Oh, it wasn't leftist enough. And I'm just so confused because do we want justice or do we want to feel the most righteous? Do we want to feel the most right, the most pure? I have the purest politics of them all. Bet. Can you build something? Probably my biggest frustration with left-leaning folk, myself included, okay? I'm doing my own deconstruction, is that we mistake being anti-everything as being equivalent to being for something, and it's not. We should be building. We should be aligning. Because I'm really just starting to think that a lot of us don't actually understand power. Or we've been taught to fear it, or we've been taught to be anti so much that we've forgotten how to use it. And there's different types of power. Power is neutral. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. It becomes one or the other depending on who wields it and how they wield it. How they wield that power determines if it is inherently evil or, if it is for the highest good. But if we keep treating all power as if it's inherently evil, if we refuse to build relationships with people who have any form of influence, resources, capital, then we are choosing to permanently be at a disadvantage. We are choosing purity over progress. That's aesthetic. That is not strategy. I was thrown off because I kept seeing people mock how old the protesting population is, like it was some sort of punchline, as if older folks aren't sitting on the bulk of this country's wealth, property, land, decision-making power. That's not a weakness. That's not something to scoff at. That's opportunity. That's where assets are. That's where influence is. That's who can help fund revolution if we know how to talk to them, if we know how to build with them. So many older people are incredibly willing to invest in causes and people and efforts and have the resources to do so. That's nothing to turn our noses up at. There's no honor in unnecessary suffering. Too many of us on the left have swallowed the eat the rich absolutism Kool-Aid because we lack discernment and focus almost exclusively on condemning the game because a lot of us don't understand it. The reality of the situation is the ideology that tends to grow fascism isn't better or more realistic or, it's quite simply better funded. That's the reality of the situation. It's better funded. This next piece is very important. Please don't misunderstand me. This is not an appeal to a capitalistic savior, so please don't come at me with the master's tools can't dismantle the master's house, and black faces and high places can't save us, and yada, 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 yada. Blanket statements, especially absolute blanket statements, rob us of nuance and strategy. Everything ever created isn't the master's tools. Stop giving them so much credit, okay? And none to the power of collective movement. The same people who scream about wanting systemic change attack people on the same side as us, policing the crowd in their own way. In that very, very specific way, you think that you're doing good, but you're becoming the oppressive force instead of the empowering force. Those same people also swear that we have to build new systems, but either don't show up or show up with no plan, no skills, no structure. The most critical people are bringing nothing to the table of change, just their bodies to throw out the machine. And, that's important because you need more people to, make a movement happen and win people over to your way of thinking. And, throwing your body at the machine is brave. While that's brave, it's not enough. Not against billionaires, not against tech surveillance, not against militarized police. A revolution that relies only on sacrifice and not strategy is a martyrdom cult. I gotta call it like I see it. In my opinion, we don't need more outrage right now. We're all raged up, okay? We're all raged up. We need outcomes. We don't need more people who contribute nothing but purity politics. I think we're good, okay? We need people who know how to recruit, and leverage power. Obsession with everything being grassroots and not organized is doing nothing but holding us back and leading to a lot of situations where people find themselves just criticizing. Oh, the signs weren't that serious? Yeah, that's because the decentralized nature of the protest. We want structure, we want aligned messaging, clear goals. That requires building, collective recruitment, collective investment. We need people who can not just throw bricks, but we also need them too. We need people who can also build bridges, who can amplify messages, who can write policy, who can understand capital flows, people who know how to negotiate with leverage. We need people who know about investment. We need people who know about diplomacy. We need urban planners. We need strategists. We need architects, people who can organize with discipline, or at the very least, people who are willing to learn, not just critique from the sidelines or excluding anyone who doesn't fit your ideal narrative of what a revolutionary is supposed to be. Resistance without relationships is just noise. Criticism without intentional action to close the gap is bitching. A follow-up to my penny for your thoughts question is, do we want to just tear it all down, or do we want to build something better? Because if all we do is burn it all down and we've never learned how to build, then what exactly are we expecting to rise from the ashes? What are we expecting to give birth to? In my perspective, in my analysis, we can't keep acting like every protest should result in immediate legislation or else it's a failure. Hot take, hot take, hot take. It's like we need instant gratification and we want it everywhere, even in our protests, when that's never happened. We want 1960s results without 1960s conditions, along with mass indoctrination of rugged individualism and the neoliberal gutting and co-opting of collective communal institutions of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that actually held the line on left-leaning movements. A lot of that stuff doesn't even happen anymore. It doesn't even exist anymore. It's been weakened to the point of not even being worth mentioning now. This is an entirely new ballgame. We look at their end result of what was probably months, if not years, of getting people organized to move as a collective, and then we compare our first drafts to someone else's finished product and then call ours a failure. We ignore all the invisible work that is happening or has happened to move the needle. That type of thinking ignores the long game. It ignores the cultural shift, the community building, the radicalization that changes mind, the collective recruitment potential, the clarity that starts to come from people showing up consistently, repeatedly, identifying the strengths and the need, and then building a base. We definitely cannot keep acting like grassroots means we need to do it with no resources, no partnership, no strategy. It's giving, I'm a strong, independent grassroots movement and I don't need no help. Okay, that mindset is what keeps us broke. It keeps us scattered. It keeps us burnt out. And if we really want to see progress, we need to evolve. That means criticism, but also intentionally providing tangible solutions and alternative and redirections. It's not enough to just diagnose all the time. We are long past the point of diagnosis. We are capped, okay, I think, on the diagnosis of problems. That means, building movements that know how to build support, that know how to build power, not just challenge it or only challenge it or move with the, all power is bad energy, which is, it's lazy and it's outdated. We're long past that point of time. Now is the time to be clear, to be strategic, be willing to grow and evolve. Now is the time. We're long past the time. And, there's this song by John Craigie that I absolutely love. And he talks about how nothing can ever be great if we won't let people be great. If we're always holding on to the greats of the past and we're not allowing space for people to be great now. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. Okay, so penny for your thoughts, friends. What do you think makes a protest effective? What would effective messaging look like in this day and age? We can share that information. What would it look like if we stopped treating protests like an end and we started treating them like a beginning? What would happen then? That's all I got for you today, my loves. Stay woke, stay kind, stay curious, and I will see you in the next one.